Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's VIN-dow with Robert Honshead. Good day to you, Bob.
Morning, Sean. How are you? Morning, everybody.
Good. Yes, good morning, everybody, and so happy that so many have found us again, and we're actually keep growing our subscription numbers, so it's going swimmingly well. So it's time to do an updated one, Bob. And you and I were chatting about how in the last couple of years, the comptrollers inside the dealership kind of disappeared, for lack of saying it anyway, other than the reality of it. But I know you had some further thoughts that we wanted to capture, so off to you.
Well, it's just the only reason the topic came up to me is, it's the end of the year. After coming off the greatest year of all time, we came into a year where it's not really necessarily the greatest of all time. We've been saying it for 7 or 8 months. The market started to crack and crumble a long time ago. As traders, we see it, I think, maybe more than folks in the showroom do. And now all of a sudden, it's no longer an antichrist conversation to have, that the market has fell apart in many categories of used cars, right? When I say fell apart, reality is set back in where they're not going up in value. They're coming down. They're coming down really fast because they went up so high. There was a long way down. And, finding the best end user of every car has become a little bit more of a task. There's fewer people. In our case, there's not fewer people logging into the sale, but there's a lot more people in the grandstands watching, kind of like a Jerry Springer type show, watching the market as opposed to participating, because I think, as we would all agree, and what our data shows in AccuTrade, time in market and volume in market on a lot of cars is increased like way beyond what has been. And we're back to 2018, 2019, where reality is the driver, as opposed to this insane, Avis and Hertz buying cars for $5,000, $10,000 over sticker that are 2 years old. That's gone. That's history. That's like sitting next to Greek mythology in automotive, the annals, right? And as a result, I talked to a lot of different dealers and dealer groups, and what we're hearing as a very common theme is, and don't forget, after coming off a couple major, big, giant, unbelievable, profitable years, we're looking at inventory that is kind of like, it's turned into dinosaur inventory. It's been laying around. It's Tyrannosaurus Rex, right? Inventory that you can't believe because they were selling so good, and all of a sudden you look around, you got 90 and 120-day-old units that are not $10 cars, they're $40,000, $50,000 cars, that when it comes time at the end of the year to take your tax write-off, because you know why, right? You got the Comptroller in the background, whose noise you didn't hear for a while because everything was going so good. The Comptroller really was not like somebody that when you heard the voice, it was like an ice pick in your ear, as it was, through all the decades prior to the COVID insanity, right? And what happens is, I think through this COVID thing, a lot of people left their guard down in terms of their normal reflex, in terms of how they do things, why they do things, because you could get lucky. For the first time in a car business, you could actually get lucky because you could do just about anything, get away with it, and actually turn a profit, and actually a huge profit, right? So now we're back to where I was just talking to a dealer group the other day. They got, it's a big dealer group. They got like 1,000 Teslas that are lying, right? And here it is, the end of the year, and it's time to take the medicine. If you had those cars in May and June, they were ripping. But if you had those cars in July and August, and now all salespeople are doing a dance around those cars because they know they don't want to waste an up showing a customer a car that has a zero chance of selling. What you wind up with is like massive amounts of cars they could blow 15 grand, 10 grand, 5 grand for sure, because they've been lying. And we didn't do, because don't forget, retail is so good you could sell anything. You never would think about wholesaling cars because you're not the best end user for those category of cars. So bringing up the Comptroller circumstance. I hear it time and time again. She's up my rear end. I got to get rid of these cars. I got 32 cars to sell, Bob. Tell me what you'd pay for these cars. You follow me? And of course, you put them in the machine. You put them in AccuTrade. You can see how long they've been there, what they've been asking for them, and so on and so forth, right? And what you wind up with is, and I think we're going to see it going forward, actually, beyond the first of the year, even more than now. Now you have enough beef that you made that you can take those massive hits. And of course, you'll pay less tax, so you write them all off at the end of the year. But moving forward, as it's funny, we buy from a lot of Audi dealers, and we got these e-trons. They're coming in. They're coming in like like rabbits. You follow me? And they don't have any retail interest whatsoever. Sell them new for invoice. Anybody will, right? Back to normal times, 2017, 18, right? So, and you're trading these cars. So, when you look at what the cars cost new, when you look at what they actually, what you'd be able to transact when you're trading them, and then when you actually get them to the auction block, and you're hitting the car at 75G, you get it to the block and set it in on the money, and there ain't no money at 50G. It starts to settle in. Now, if you've got those cars in stock and the controller's screaming, that noise starts to become an ice pick in your ear again, right? And what that's going to do, if I'm not mistaken, is, you're going to take the losses this year. Everybody's going to be pissed off. It's a bad month and all the rest of it, but you're out of it. You're done. We're going to be right back to where we've been throughout, in my case, 50 years of the car business, without any kind of cushion of the insanity that occurred through the COVID era, the epic, let's call it, right? And as a result, the comptroller, you got to picture this now. The general manager is definitely in charge of everything, but they really aren't. They only think they are. The controller's in charge of the dealership. You know why that is? Because the owner trusts the controller, because they're the ones that are spitting the numbers out, even though the controller doesn't understand what happens in the showroom necessarily, or all the rest of the knowledge that's necessary to talk the thing and train the salespeople to move the inventory kind of thing. They're in charge. In other words, the controller is the one that says, you got this much inventory, you got to get rid of X, Y, Z. And then when you start looking at X, Y, and Z, and it's these hamburgers that have been laying around forever, and they've timed out, and you use one of these Mickey Mouse marketplaces, they'll come to a condition report, name any one of them, and you ain't getting anywhere remotely close to what you need for those cars. Like, reality starts to hit you square in the eyeballs. You see what I'm saying to you? And the noise of the controller in the background is not going away. That noise is not only heard by you as the used car manager, general manager, depending on the dynamics of your dealership, the owner, whether it be somebody that's aloof and has 20 rooftops or whatever, that person is hearing the controller loud and clear also. And now all of a sudden you got the poop in the fan. You follow me? I'm seeing it more and more and more. You also see it in at the auction, where a lot of little people do that rep thing, and they rep other people's cars, and the no sales stream is piling on. You're watching cars with legitimate buyers trying to buy cars, but of course you can't sell them because you can't take those kind of losses. It's frustrating, obviously, the auction, because you don't wind up transacting because everybody's looking for unrealistic expectations. The long and the short of it is, I think, as the controller's voice becomes a little more prominent once again, we're going to find that we're going to be back to 2017, 18, 19, pre-COVID modus operandi in the dealership. And that's where you really do need to have, in my estimation, a platform that enables all of the knowledge necessary to actually put a number on a car, whether you're buying it you know, on the street, you're buying it in a service drive, you're buying it at an auction, or you're trying to trade it, put a number that actually is related to the actual market value of the car and your specific circumstances. Does that make any sense to you at all, Shani? The controller's voice, I think, is now one that's was in the background, and it's now going to be on a monthly basis, end of the month. Well, what about? I think it's going to be that parrot sitting there chirping in the person responsible for acquisition and disposition of the inventory. It's going to be biting his eardrum, if I'm not mistaken.
I think doesn't 17, 18, 19 seem like a lifetime ago? That's the fear.
Well, it's a different world, and it's long enough ago that I think it's very easy to forget the ABCs, the Dick and Jane of the car business. Now we're seeing all the geniuses disappear, you know, because they're going to show us how it works, and they do things that car dealers can't do, and people hate car dealers, and they're going to use some hocus pocus to sell their car and all that. And they're all gone. I mean, all of those things, the remnants of it are still hanging around, but they're no longer. And I don't think in the next year or two, even though they did create some electrical shock in dealers about how they treat their online presence and how they kiss a customer's rear end and drop the car off at his house and make sure everything's perfect and things. But the fundamentals were not really changed in any way. And the outsiders that come and try to teach us our business really haven't taught us anything, in my estimation, other than you got to treat people better and you might give them a little different kind of service. But the fundamentals remain intact. You see what I'm saying to you, Sean? It's not like we're reveling in the fact that there's, you know, people going down the tubes. I give them all the respect in the world for making a real good try and ruffling people's feathers along the way. But you know, the car business is very difficult to make fundamental, like move the cornerstones type change. It's very hard. You know, I think we're going to see the same thing with electric cars. You know, this whole thing is going electric cars. You pick up automotive news, that's all you're allowed to read. Electric everything. I don't think electric anything's going anywhere in the big picture. I think it's going to be hydrogen. I think it's going to be alternative fuels, but it's not going to be. It's definitely. I just came back from South America. There's nobody in South America ever going to use an electric car. There's nobody in Africa ever going to use an electric car. There's nobody in the vast majority of the world ever. The infrastructure, the capability, the practicality, never going to happen. If you listen to the CEO of Toyota, he's the first person to say it. It's nonsense to talk about this thing where everybody's going to be driving an electric car. It's never going to happen. It's all of these outside influences that get the microphone that start spouting off things because they're smart people, and they really are smart. And I'm not being facetious. Smart people, just out of touch, man. And that's what we're seeing in our basic fundamental business today. An auctioneer with a hammer and a willing seller reveals the best end user 97% of the time, efficiently, beautifully, like you know, like an orchestra. It's just beautiful stuff, right? Can there be an alternative to that a little bit, where dealers are using software to have their own marketplace? Absolutely. But it won't fly in the face of what the controller's saying. You got to get rid of these hamburgs. You bought it, you traded it, you got to get rid of it right now. And that means you're going to have to be aware of the market value and do it in an efficient manner, or you're going to be looking for a new job. It's my theory.
That's great. Well said, and thank you for saying it, Bob. Have a good day.
You got it, Shawnee. Too much again, all right? All right. I got cut off. See you later, pal.